Band-in-a-Box 2015 for Mac comes with over 1,000 new loops covering many popular music genres. They are all preloaded and will appear in the loops dialog. This tutorial will teach you how to do a variety of things with loops, starting with basic functions like adding and removing loops, then moving on to other features like importing, cloning, and adding Substyle loops. Let's start by using an Apple loop in a song. I'm going to add a bass loop to a song that needs a bass part. The first step is to choose the correct Band-in-a-Box track at the top of the window. Right now we want to use the bass track. Then I'll select a loop from the list. Because this loop has embedded Apple Loops data, the root note and tempo are already filled in. The same applies for acidized loops. Now I'll add this loop to the song and let the accompanying real tracks generate. And as you can hear, the loop fits perfectly with the rest of the song, playing the changes that are entered in the chord sheet. We can even change the tempo and the chords, generate again, and the loop will still play along. Next, I will show you how to remove a loop from your song. Let's say you've decided to use real drums instead of a drum loop. You can easily open the Loops dialog, select the Band-in-a-Box track that currently has a loop, and select No Loop Chosen for this track from the list. That's all there is to it. Let's move on to some intermediate concepts and import some loops from GarageBand. First, let's navigate to the GarageBand Loops folder in Finder. If you have GarageBand version 2 or later, your loops will be stored in the Library, Audio, Apple Loops, Apple folder. Then I'll open a second Finder window and go to the Band-in-a-Box Loops folder. By default, it is Applications, Band-in-a-Box, Real Tracks, Loops. If you are running Band-in-a-Box from an external hard drive, first browse to the external hard drive, then go to the same Applications, Band-in-a-Box, Real Tracks, Loops subfolder. Next, I will create a new folder in the Loops directory called GarageBand, which will allow me to keep my loops organized. Then all I have to do is drag the loops over from their original folder to the new one I've created within the Band-in-a-Box Loops folder. Now if I open the Loops window in Band-in-a-Box, all of my imported loops are present. And since they have Apple Loops data, I am able to see their tempo and key, if the key is applicable. Now I'll show you how to import loops from another source. Again, we just need to locate our audio files in Finder and transfer them to the Band-in-a-Box, Real Tracks, Loops directory. By default, Band-in-a-Box will accept WAV, AIF, AIFF, CAF, MP3, MP4, and M4A file types as loops. You can also use WMAs if you have Flip for Mac or a similar program installed. Remember that Band-in-a-Box can only detect the tempo and key of your loop if the file is an Apple loop or is acidized. Otherwise, you will have to enter the tempo and key manually. Here's what you can do if your loops don't have transpose and tempo data. We're back in the Loops window. This time I've selected a loop for the bass track that doesn't have tempo and transpose data. I'm going to put a check mark beside stretch, tempo, and transpose, because both of these parameters are applicable to this loop. I know it is 140 beats per minute, 4 beats long, and plays a bass note in the key of C. Now that the data is entered, it will be saved with this loop so we can save time later. I'll add the loop to the song, and as you can see, it is playing along perfectly. It's time for some advanced concepts. Let's create a drum loop in Band-in-a-Box using real drums. The first thing we need to do is make sure that Include Apple Loop Info in AIFF files is checked in the Render to Audio Files window. We also need to go to Preferences DAW plugin and make sure Drag Audio As is set to AIFF. Now I am going to select this real drum style from the Real Drums picker and highlight the first 4 bars of the chord sheet, which will allow me to render a 4-bar loop. Then I drag the drums track to the drop station, wait for it to change color, and drag the finished file to the band-in-a-box loops directory in Finder. I'm going to rename the file so it's easier to find in band-in-a-box. If I open the loops dialog in band-in-a-box, our loop is now ready to use with tempo data available. Finally, I will show you how to clone a loop and add a loop to the B substyle of your song. You can save a B substyle loop with any loop in band-in-a-box. Once you have selected a B substyle loop, it will be saved with your parent loop. It is suggested that you create a clone of your original loop before adding a substyle loop, so the original is not affected. You can do this by selecting the desired loop and clicking on Clone. Then enter a name for the clone. I am going to add with B to the file name. Now make sure you have the clone version selected and click on the Choose button. Select the secondary loop you want from this dialog. The path of the substyle loop is now displayed. Now let's test it out. As you can see, it gives the song a more dynamic feel. Thanks for watching this tutorial and have fun adding loops to your project.